Hello and welcome back to Retired UK. Grab a cup of tea because I want to draw something out for you today that explains why so many pensioners in this country are suddenly getting letters from HMRC that they never expected in their life. Let me start with two numbers. I'm going to write them on the board because once you see them next to each other, everything else in this video makes sense. Number 1. This year's full new state pension, £12,547.60. Number 2. Your personal allowance. That's the amount you're allowed to earn before income tax kicks in, £12,570. Look at the gap between those two numbers. Go on, look closely. £2,240. That's it. That's the entire gap between your state pension and the tax line. What that means in plain English is that your state pension on its own now uses up almost every penny of your tax-free allowance. So output you've got anything else coming in, a small workplace pension, a bit of part-time work, or simply interest on the savings you've built up over a lifetime, you are now inside the tax system. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you came into money, just because of a gap of £22. Let me draw why this happened, because it's not complicated once you see it. Here's a line going up. That's your state pension rising every year under the triple lock. This year alone, it went up 4.8%. Now, here's a flat line next to it. That's your personal allowance. It's been frozen since April 2021 and it's staying frozen. Two lines, one climbing, one flat, and this year they've almost crashed into each other. That's the trap. Nobody sat you down and explained it. It just happened quietly year after year while the headlines were about other things. Now, here's the bit that catches people out completely. Your bank tells HMRC everything. Every single year, banks and building societies report the interest they've paid you automatically. You don't fill in a form, you don't opt in, it just goes straight to HRC. And output you owe tax on it, they simply adjust your tax code or send you what's called a simple assessment, a letter out of nowhere telling you what you owe. Let me put a face on this because numbers on a whiteboard only means so much until you see how it plays out for a real person. Picture a widow in her 70s, full state pension, a small council pension of about £2,000 a year and £40,000 in savings, money from selling the family car, decades of careful saving with her husband. Nothing flashy, nothing anyone would call wealthy. Here's her position, and I want to draw this as a simple sum. Her state pension has already used up all but £22 of her allowance. So that £2,000 workplace pension almost entirely taxable. And her £40,000 in savings sitting in a decent account is generating well over £1,000 a year in interest, which breaches her personal savings allowance too. Her bank reports it, HMRC adjusts her code, and she is completely baffled because she has never paid tax in retirement in her life. That's not a rare story. That is an ordinary pensioner in the UK right now in 2026. Now, before I show you the fix, and I promise I will, let me give you one honest exception. Because I'd genuinely rather you did nothing than something you don't need. There's a rule called the starting rate for savings. It's worth up to £5,000 of savings interest at a 0% tax rate. The catch is, it shrinks the more other income you have above your personal allowance. So, output your only real income is the state pension, and you don't have a workplace pension on top, you might already have quite a lot of tax-free room here on top of your normal savings allowance. Output, that's you, modest savings, no private pension. You may not need to change anything today. I'd rather tell you that plainly than have you go and rearrange money you didn't need to touch. But the moment you've got a workplace pension, or your savings grow, or interest rates move again, that protection disappears fast. And that's exactly where the account I want to show you comes in. Let me draw the box. This is an ISA, an individual savings account. Now, I know most of you have heard the word before, so stay with me, because it's not what's inside the box that matters. It's what the box does. I'm going to draw it as a box with a lid, because that's genuinely the best way to think about it. An ISA isn't an investment in itself. It's a wrapper, a protective container you put ordinary savings inside. And here's what happens once your money is in that box. Any interest it earns, never taxed. Any growth, never taxed. And this is the part people miss. It never appears on a tax return. It never touches your personal savings allowance. It never gets reported to HMRC as taxable income. As far as your tax bill is concerned, money inside that box simply doesn't exist. Let me draw the comparison side by side, because it's stack. On the left, someone puts £20,000 in an ordinary savings account. Say it earns £900 in interest over the year. Depending on their other income, some or all of that is taxable, reported automatically, collected through their tax code. On the right, someone puts the same £20,000 in a cash ISA. Same bank, same rate, roughly the same £900 in interest. Completely tax-free, no reporting, no tax code change, no letter. Same money, same rate, different box. That's the whole story. And here's the bit that really compounds. You can put up to £20,000 into ISAs every single tax year. And once it's in there, it stays sheltered forever. Next year, you get a fresh £20,000 allowance on top. Do that for 3 years running, and you've got £60,000 permanently outside the reach of income tax, at a decent rate. That's over £2,000 a year in interest that HRC will simply never see for the rest of your life. Quick note before I move on. There are 2 flavours of ISA. A cash ISA works exactly like your normal savings account, just with the tax removed, and it's protected the same way under the Savings Compensation Scheme. A stocks and shares ISA invests your money instead. And while the tax treatment is just as good, the value can go down as well as up. For most of us at this stage of life, especially with money we might need, cash is the sensible, boring, safe choice. Nobody should be talked into investing money they can't afford to see fall. Now, here's the part I really want you to stay for, because this genuinely didn't get much coverage, and it matters more to you than almost anyone else watching this channel. In the autumn budget, the government confirmed that from the 6th of April 2027, the amount most people can put into a cash ISA is being cut. Instead of £20,000, most savers will only be able to put £12,000 a year into cash. The overall ISA allowance stays at £20,000. But the remaining £8,000 has to go into a stocks and shares ISA, where your money is at risk. Now, here's what I want to draw a circle around, because this is the good news in all of it. Output till you are 65 or over, that cut simply does not apply to you. You keep the full £20,000 cash ISA allowance. This was written into the government's own ISA reform documents, deliberately to protect older savers who rely on cash. From April 2027, someone aged 64 is capped at £12,000 in cash. Someone aged 65 keeps the full £20,000. You will have the most generous cash ISA allowance available to anyone in the country. And there's a second change stacked right on top of that. From April 2027, the tax on savings interest held outside an ISA is going up across the board. Basic rate to 22%, higher rate to 42%, additional rate to 47%. So, put those two lines next to each other on the board. Tax outside the ISA going up, and your cash ISA allowance protected in full, purely because of your age. The gap between money inside that box and money outside it is about to become the widest it has ever been. And you are the one group the government has chosen to leave the door open for. Now, the part I most want the widows and widowers watching this to hear, because almost nobody claims it. Outpot. You've lost a husband, wife, or civil partner. There's an entitlement called the Additional Permitted Subscription. Most people just call it the Inherited ISA Allowance. Here's what it does. When someone dies holding an ISA, their surviving spouse gets an extra one-off allowance equal to the value of everything that was in it, on top of their own £20,000 for the year. Let me draw the sum. Say your late husband had £50,000 across his ISAs. You get your normal £20,000 allowance for the year, plus an extra £50,000 because of his ISA. That's £70,000 you can shelter that year instead of £20,000. 3 things to be precise about, because this is where people trip up. First, you get this allowance even outpot his ISA money was left to someone else entirely, like the children. It isn't the money you're inheriting, it's the allowance. You can fill it with any money you like. Second, there's a deadline. Generally, 3 years from the date of death, or 180 days after the estate is settled, whichever is later. That sounds like plenty of time, but grief and paperwork eat into it fast. Third, it is not automatic. Nobody writes to offer it to you. You have to contact the provider, ask for the value at the date of death, and apply. It applies to deaths from December 2014 onwards. So even outpot your spouse passed some years ago, it may still be open to you. Outpot you've been widowed and never heard of this, please look into it. And outpot you know someone who has a sister, a neighbour, a friend from church, mention it. The banks certainly won't, right? Let's talk about how to actually move money, because there is one mistake here that costs people an entire year's allowance, and I want to draw it very clearly so you never make it. Outpot, you're moving savings into an ISA, or you've got an old one sitting on a dreadful rate. Do not withdraw the money and pay it back in yourself. Ask for a transfer. Here's why. Outpot, you take money out of an existing ISA and then deposit it into a new one. It's left the wrapper. Putting it back counts as a brand new contribution and eats into this year's £20,000 allowance. So, outpot, you had £30,000 sitting in an old ISA and withdrew it. You couldn't even fit it all back in this year, and you'd permanently lose the shelter on the excess. Do it properly instead. Every ISA provider offers an official transfer. You go to the new provider, the one with the better rate, Open the account and fill in a transfer form telling them where your money currently sits. They contact the old provider and move it bank to bank. The money never technically leaves the wrapper, and transferring old ISA money uses up none of this year's allowance. You still have your full £20,000 free to use. So, never withdraw to move, always transfer. Write that down. Outpot, you write nothing else down today. A few more quick practical points before we finish. Rates on cash ISAs vary hugely between providers and loyalty is punished. Old accounts quietly drift down to poor rates, so it's worth checking what yours actually pays. Ask whether an account is flexible. With a flexible ISA, money you withdraw and put back within the same tax year doesn't count against your allowance, which is useful. Outpot, you might need to dip in. You can also split your £20,000 across different ISAs. Outpot, you like. And remember, the allowance runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April and does not roll over. Use it or lose it. One serious warning before I close. Nobody legitimate will ever ring you out of the blue, offering a special ISA with an unusually good rate. That is a well-known tactic used by fraudsters targeting older savers. Real ISAs come from banks and building societies that you approach yourself. Outpot, someone rings you first, put the phone down. And 3 honest things this account does not do, because I'd rather you heard it from me than found out the hard way. 1. An ISA is not free from inheritance tax. It's tax-free while you're alive, but when you die it becomes part of your estate like anything else. 2. Money in an ISA still counts. Outpot, you're claiming means-tested help like pension credit. The tax wrapper doesn't hide it from that assessment. 3. A stocks and shares ISA carries real risk. Outpot. Those 2027 rules are nudging you toward investing. Take proper, regulated advice first, and never invest money you might need soon. So, let me draw this all together one last time. The personal allowance is frozen. Your state pension has all but filled it. Your bank reports your interest automatically. From 2027, tax on savings outside an ISA is rising, while the cash ISA allowance is being cut for almost everyone except you. Outpot. You're 65 or over. You've done nothing wrong to end up here. It happened through a frozen number and a rising pension, quietly, with nobody explaining it. But the fix really is this simple. Make sure the money you worked 40 or 50 years for is sitting in the box HMRC can't reach, not the one it can. Outpot. You've been widowed. Ask about that inherited allowance. And whatever you do, transfer. Never withdraw. One honest note to close on. This is general information, not personal financial advice. Rules and allowances change, and everyone's circumstances are different. So do check the current position on gov.uk, UK, or with a regulated advisor before moving anything. Outpot. This was useful. Hit subscribe. Retired UK puts out plain English videos like this every week. No jargon, nothing you need a dictionary for. Let me know in the comments. Outpot. You've had a tax code change or an HMRC letter recently. Yes or no? I'd genuinely like to see how widely this is biting. Look after yourself. Look after your money. And I'll see you in the next.